would like to start with an introduction to what I'm doing today, like what I'm speaking about. So I'm 34 today. I've had a longish journey of escaping the most serious form of violence that I was facing. And it has been about 6 years since that has happened. So you can imagine that it has been a bit of a journey of healing, of getting to a place where I want to be, unlearning behaviors and trauma, etc. So why I felt necessary to say that is today, through my narrative, what I'm doing is I'm looking back at my life. It is very difficult to encapsulate more than half my life in like 10-15 minutes, but I'll try. And because this is a conversation about abuse, it is even more difficult because my early childhood, my teenage years and my early adulthood were dominated by one particular personality who was abusive in every sense of the word. Now, as the initial presentation set forth, that the abuse can be of different forms. And unfortunately for me, and especially for my mother, who was the, so to say, primary victim in this household, we were subjected to every form of abuse that is imaginable. So let me sort of paint a picture as to how the situation was. And this is especially important because a lot of the time when the conversation about domestic violence, about abuse, be it emotional, physical, or of any other sort, it comes up, the conversation tends to veer towards why didn't she leave, why didn't they leave, or what stopped her from leaving, and questions of that sort. That is a question we are going to address in panel that is to come soon. So I intend to, through my narrative, sort of set a context for it. So I grew up in a home which was in a small town. Again, that's an important factor in my reality because I was surrounded by conversations which did not talk about abuse at all. Talking about abuse is probably a big expectation because it didn't even acknowledge abuse. So no matter where I was staying, be it in a flat or a bungalow, no matter how the surrounding was, whether the buildings were close or far off, nobody could hear the sound. Nobody could hear the screams. Nobody could hear any of the halchal that was happening in a house constantly. When I say nobody could, what I mean is nobody wanted to. Imagine being raised like that. Imagine growing up like that. And then you get a sort of a sense of the suffocation and the frustration and the helplessness of this household. So when I was growing up, when I started sort of understanding my mother's reality, slowly the stories came out that she had been facing severe abuse almost from the first day of her marriage. She was continuing to face severe abuse even when she was pregnant with me. So she always used to sort of tell me that you came out prepared for a situation. There has been recent research which has pointed to certain behavioral and in fact even DNA changes that the fetus can undergo if in utero there is some experience of abuse, especially to the person who is pregnant. I'm not sure, I cannot validate that point, but that is a research. The point being that violence, direct or indirect, can have catastrophic, life-changing, sometimes DNA-changing effects on you. So that's how I was born. I was born into a household where I probably was wired to expect violence. I was wired to expect lack of control. As I was growing up, every single day was a struggle. If you have been a person ever in your life who has asked this question, why didn't she leave? let me sort of explain how everyday life is. Everyday life is an existence where you do not have control. And the perpetrator or the perpetrators in your house, depending on your situation, are the ones who yield control. So it was in our household in the sense that if the perpetrator in the house, who was my father, woke up and was in a bad mood, the mandate of the house was that everybody should be in a bad mood. Especially nobody should laugh or have a good time because he was in a bad mood. This is the situation and the reality of abuse that a lot of persons who have been fortunate enough to not undergo abuse do not understand. That it's not just dramatic incidents that define abuse, it is the everyday slow burn, every look, every walk, every turned face, every fear of a slap, every risk or threat of any sort of violence that adds to the abuse. This is also abuse. This slow burning fear that you constantly walk with, that you are constantly walking on eggshells. You don't know what you will say or what you will do or what may be imagined that may lead to some form of abuse. So this is how you live every single day. Because you do not have any control whatsoever, are never sure of yourself. I remember that I used to be a good student, so as to speak, in the sense that I would score well. I participated in competitions, we won awards, and I was generally appreciated. And I think I was looked at as being a student who should have her life sorted out and, had a good plan for her life. But the truth couldn't be farther from what it was, because I was absolutely unsure of everything in my life. Because right from the point I was born, the communication that I received, the messaging that I received from my house was, I was nothing, that I was zero, that I could not control my life at all, that even if what the other person is appreciating me for is not really appreciation, that I don't really deserve it, or that I should not, feel too proud about it. So basically, your mind and how it functions is in fact in the hands of someone else, much more powerful, much more whimsical, much more cruel. So what a lot of people who are looking from outside in don't realize is it's an extremely cruel place to be in. You do not get to relax. You do not get to have a happy day on your own terms. You do not get to enjoy an achievement on your own terms. Everything is decided by the perpetrator. So for me, by the time I was 18 and it was a chance for me to go out and study, and thankfully I had gotten through a college which was outside of the state. So this was the first time I could get out of the house. You can imagine how lonely I felt, how completely clueless I was, because here I was physically grown up, but completely unaware of what I am, what I can do, what I stand for, what my real personality is. I don't know anything. I do not want to go into the details and nuances of the kind of abuse we faced and we saw, especially because it was my mother facing most of it and it is her story to tell. I am going to talk about how I, as a daughter, as a product of a household of this sort where verbal abuse was very common against the children, though physical abuse wasn't, how it affected us so strongly, and how the fact that you saw your mother facing extreme cruelty, extreme physical violence, how that affected you very strongly. So by the time I was 18 and I was in college, it is an exciting time. Generally, it is considered an exciting time because you're on your own, you get your allowance, you can live the way you want to. It was terrifying time for me because it is how every abuse victim or survivor feels. It is the first time that freedom is tasted and freedom feels scary. Freedom is scary because you do not know what to do with it. You have never experienced it. You don't know how it functions, what the responsibilities are. Even if I had a completely unconditional sort of freedom in my hands, I would not know what to do with it because I had never experienced it. So for every survivor and every victim, the biggest challenge while coming out into the world is to start from zero, start learning things in terms of how to cope with the world, what to do with yourself, look at oneself in the mirror and realize that, okay, this is what I see and this is what I have been led to believe is me. But is that me? I'm not sure. So for me, what started at 18 was this long drawn process of realizing what the real me is, what all factors I have to unlearn, what all sort of behavior patterns I didn't need anymore. And then it was time again for me to come back home and break up the marriage that was the basis of all the violence. So what I had unlearned over the few years, I had to sort of go back and sort of take it back on, because here was the time for action. So what a lot of people unfortunately do not understand about violence is how it completely saps you from all your energy, all your positivity, and how constantly you are the one responsible for it. You are the one responsible for talking about violence, you're the one responsible for dealing with people who are doubting your story. You're the one responsible for dealing with misogynistic statements made at the police station. You're the one responsible for restarting your life. You're the one responsible for figuring out your life. The point is, nobody understands what level of mental labor it involves to even restart, if at all you get the opportunity to restart. I know it is a long-winding, complicated story, because abuse stories are always long-winding and complicated. It is near impossible for me to have a straight-laced strategic speech on abuse, because so much has happened and so much is intersecting. It is very, very difficult. So what I want to end with is, it is never a straight line. It is never black and white, no matter who the perpetrator is. It is never a linear path towards healing. It is not the easiest subject to understand. And it is absolutely wrong to ask, why didn't you leave? Imagine being in a household where even breathing can be a problem. Imagine being in a household where you sometimes don't even buy your own clothes. Imagine being in a household where if you happen to drop a glass of water by accident, you will hear a scolding for 4 hours straight. Imagine living in a household like that. Imagine how much control you have, how much decision-making power you have, how much confidence you have in yourself. You don't. So to look from outside in and judge someone on the basis of your own self-confidence is wrong, because your self-confidence is not the self-confidence the survivor has. So anytime that you are engaging with someone who has unfortunately been a victim or a survivor and are looking to support them, please understand that it is more about listening than pontificating. You have to listen, you have to understand the situation. Because the truth is, even though I am a survivor, and it was not just the domestic violence that I faced, it was also like other forms of violence that I faced later in my life. That does not mean that I'm going to understand another survivor or another victim's story completely. I also have to listen. There is no template for it. There is no textbook for it. Every situation is different because issues are intersecting. My intersecting issues included and continue to include my caste, my class, the way I look, the education I've had, and a lot of other things. So no survivor is the same as the other survivor. No victim is the same as the other victim. So if the conversation is about how we create a society where abuse itself seems so reprehensible that it doesn't happen, we have to first understand the nuances of abuse, not just as a police person or as a person involved in the justice system, but as people in general, as bystanders, as neighbors who refuse to acknowledge that that house, there is something happening. All of us are responsible for this. And I feel you can look at me today. I have struggled and I continue to struggle with so many things, be it insomnia, be it PTSD, so many other things, But so much of that effort had to be individual because there is no infrastructure in society available for you. So you're alone. You're alone at home and you're alone after you get out. You are responsible for so much that you have to do. Just imagine the amount of mental labor you have to do to get to where you want to be. Have empathy and compassion towards survivors. If you don't have that, if that is not your starting point, you will never understand abuse and you will continue to ask questions like why you didn't leave. Thank you.